This is a Triple J podcast.
Okay, Richard Kingsmill here. PJ Harvey had been such an incredible and inspiring musical force throughout the 90s that when she finally toured Australia for the first time in 2001, I jumped at the chance of interviewing her. This was a perfect time in her career too to have a chat to PJ Harvey, because the year before she released Stories from the City, Stories from the Sea, her fifth album, which took out the Mercury Music Prize. It's still one of her best albums, and she wrote a fair bit of it while living in New York for the majority of 1999.
Now is the time to follow through, to read the signs. Now the message sent, let's bring it to its final end.
When I spoke to her, she was out here for the big day out, as well as a few of her own shows, one of which I saw on a very hot January night at Sydney's Enmore Theatre. It was a pretty special show, that one, and Mick Harvey from the Bad Seeds, who she'd been working with, got up and played with her that night too. As well as talking about her acclaimed new album and her approach to songwriting, I also wanted to touch on the relationship between her and Nick Cave. That relationship had become public knowledge since the release of his album, The Boatman's Call. I wasn't sure, going into the interview, exactly how she'd react to being asked about that. Polly Harvey, welcome to Australia.
Thank you, it's good to be here.
I saw your show the other night in Sydney. It was absolutely boiling inside, yet after a nearly 2-hour performance, everyone in the audience was dripping with sweat, but you looked as fresh as you were when you started.
I wasn't. Oh no, I wasn't. Believe me. Now I'm somebody that very rarely breaks a sweat on stage, and in fact, since I've been here in Australia, it's the first time I've ever actually had drips coming off of me.
I couldn't see it. I was about halfway back.
My dress was absolutely soaking. I was the hottest and wettest I've ever been.
What is your sort of mind like on stage when you perform? After a performance, can you remember every detail, or do you lose yourself in the performance?
It's a combination. I very much do lose myself when I'm performing. It does sometimes within songs, sometimes for a whole song, sometimes for whole sets. You kind of feel taken over on a ride by something else, and you kind of almost like an outer body experience it can be. And certainly there were times at that show that happened. There were other times when I was extremely nervous and could remember making mistakes, not hitting notes that I wanted to hit, stuff like that. So the mistakes I can remember, but then when it's going well, I usually don't remember, because it is almost like it comes through me rather than from me, if you know what I mean.
Than trying to force it or feeling like you have to force it. Yeah. So the sign of a good gig is if you have a lot of those moments where you just caught in the moment.
The sign of a good gig is if you just come off stage feeling euphoric and everybody feels the same, because, often one of us might have a good gig, but then somebody else has had a terrible gig just in the same night. So I think we were all very pleased with that show.
Obviously, you feel like you have to carry a lot more weight than the other members, I'd imagine. I mean, does that sort of bother you at any stage where you can't sort of fall back into that sense of being in a band and let everyone take equal pressure?
Well, obviously there are good sides and bad sides to it. I've taken responsibility for kind of making this on my own now, and so along with that is going to come extra work and the burden of doing promotion much more than the rest of the band. But then the good parts is, I love to be able to choose the different players literally every time I go out on the road, and that provides me with a lot more inspiration for the music and the way that I choose to play the music. And I enjoy changing and working with different people. Were I to have a fixed band that shared responsibilities, that I couldn't do that. So those are good parts to it as well. There's
a few constants there, though, in the people that you've worked with, like Eric Feldman's been with you for a while now.
Yeah, Eric Feldman I've been with since 95. Well, funnily enough, he doesn't play on the album, though. Rob Ellis, I started playing with again in 97, after not having played with him since 93. So, he's been a constant since then.
So the people around you influence you, and I'd imagine also the landscape that you put yourself in influences you greatly too, because that's reflected in the title of the album and the feeling of the album, isn't it?
Enormously. I think that a lot of my songwriting just comes from observation of people, of places, of interacting with people, and by putting myself in unfamiliar situations, it does force one to look at things with a new perspective, not to take things for granted, but it's like seeing things anew for the first time, and that can be very exciting as a writer and creatively, just as a person.
I mean, as a person, you'd be like that, so you weren't writing songs and you weren't in the music-making business. Do you think as a person, as an individual, you'd be like that?
I think I've always had the wandering spirit in me, yes, even from an early age. I've always been drawn to wanting to explore, wanting to move, and throughout my life I tend to have moved location quite a lot.
Is that because when you grew up as a kid, were you moving a lot with your family?
When I grew up as a kid, I was living in a very remote part of the countryside, and always my dream when I was there was to get out of there. So, I was always thinking about ways that I might leave here and go other places.
But essentially you've remained in Dorset, isn't it? Not far from where you grew up.
I keep a flat there. I've got a base there. And it's nice to have a base somewhere. I mean, that's where all my family live. So, I like to keep somewhere going there. But I very rarely spend time there. I mean, Christmas time and, the odd occasion in between touring. Other than that, I usually just look for somewhere else to go and spend time.
But that sense of place and home is still very important to you?
No, not in the sense of it being in England, in Dorset. No, I think a sense of home I find in myself much more than, wherever I happen to be, rather than a location or a place in particular. And I think I've, over the years, that's kind of come about in me because I do spend such a long time away from England that were I to think of that as my security in my home, I'd spend most of the time feeling homesick and miserable. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
And I like to try and live on a day-by-day basis and just wherever I happen to be, make the most of that, really. And
how was that New York experience? Because that was by choice to basically write this album?
Well, I didn't. I think more is made of that than is actually true. About 6 songs on the record come from my time there. And I write all the time. I write wherever I am. So many of the songs were written in England. Some were written in Europe when I was travelling through there. Some were written in various different cities in England when I was living in different places. They weren't all written in New York, but I did choose to go there last year because I'd spent a little bit of time there in the past and always felt excited and inspired by the city, and just thought I wanted to see what I would find were I to just be living there, not just passing through.
And how long did you spend there?
I was there for about 7 months.
Right, okay. And did the ideas come immediately?
Immediately, yeah. I mean, like I said, I write all the time. So, it's not like I sit down and say, right, I'm going to be writing now for this month. I'm just going to start at 9 and end at 5. It's not like that. It's just a continual process. I mean, even just walking through streets or sitting observing something can be what I call writing time for me.
Okay. Do songs come to you when you're walking down a street? Does a melody pop into your head and then a lyric?
Oh, yeah, they can come anywhere. They can come in dreams, walking. They can come when I do sit down and say, right, I'm going to think of something now. Or they can, come when you least expect them, really. Airplanes.
Yeah. What are the characters like in New York? I've never been there. Everyone tells me you've got to go to New York City once in your life. I mean, what are the characters like on the street?
Just every variety you can think of. I mean, obviously it's multiracial more than any city I've ever come across. It's such a feeling of mixed race there that it's actually very eye-opening. It really widens your perspective of life being there, because there's just about every nationality you can think of living in a very small space. I think it's 10 or 12 million people in a very small stretch of land. So going to the places I was going to a lot of music, a lot of dance, a lot of theatre, a lot of poetry readings, and you just bump into people all the time that are on the same kind of wavelength as you because they're going to those same things, so that's always a good place to meet people.
Is that something you have to be conscious of as the name PJ Harvey and Polly Harvey, as you become more prominent and more albums come out? Obviously there's that fascination with you as an individual and as an artist. Do you have to be wary of the people that you choose to have close to you in your personal life?
I guess, yes, I am wary, much more than I ever used to be. But at the same time, I try and remain open. It's very easy to shut down and block off any new friendships that might be formed just because of thinking how somebody might think about you. So I'm always open. I'm quite a good judge of character. I can very quickly tell if somebody is really quite genuinely seeing me and speaking to me as a person, or whether somebody is a bit starstruck or wanting something else from me other than just wanting to be friends with me. if you know what I mean, as a person.
Yeah. And love, once again, love sort of dominates the themes of a lot of the songs that you do write on your records, and it's sort of continued on now. Do you feel like it is an environment or a subject matter where you can explore even more in the future? Do you feel like it'll ever dry up for you?
No, I just think it's an endless theme to explore. You know, I think often when people talk about that, I'd say, oh, well, every song I've ever written feels like a love song. I think I'm probably right. I think it was Elvis that quoted that, or Johnny Cash, or somebody like that. I can't remember exactly, but you know, if you think of Elvis's career, I mean, every single song he did was a love song, and it's endless, absolutely endless. And what makes the world go around, to put it very in a cliche, but I think it is, and it's what we're all drawn to in human nature and as human beings.
Do you ever feel like, when you come up with a new idea for a song, oh no, maybe this is going down the path of this other song that I wrote a few years ago, and you stop yourself?
Yes, I'm always very aware of that. I think that whenever I'm writing, the thing of primary concern for me is of not repeating myself. And it does get very difficult, obviously, you know, when you've written as many songs as I have now. But it's always my ambition to keep moving forward and keep challenging myself to do things that I haven't done yet. Whether that's good or bad, you know, whether I fall on my face or whether it's a success, at least I've tried to do that.
With each album, it becomes more hard though, doesn't it? Because you've got that extra challenge to face.
Yeah, I think of trying to find new ground still. But, I mean, at the same time, I feel so novice to it all. I feel like there's so much I haven't explored vocally and with song. You know, ideas come to me so often of things I think I haven't tried and want to try doing. So I can't see it becoming a problem, you know, for a while yet.
Stories is a very different album to Is This Desire, in especially the sound of it. Does that also reflect the personality of yourself changing a lot in the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, I think every album is quite a reflection of where I am at that place in my life and, you know, in that time. Yeah, Is This Desire came out of a very difficult period for me. Like the years between sort of 95 and 97, 98 was probably the hardest time of my life, and I did, you know, that album came out of that period, so it was a very difficult album to make, quite a painful album to make, and still not one that I can listen to very easily at all.
Do you regret that?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it was a very challenging record for people. It's not an album that you can play lightly. I think it's got a lot of very heavy going dark material on there, and it was quite a fight for me to put it out. You know, that's a lot of people were very disappointed in it. People in the business, people at the record company that I work with were, you know, wanting something different to what I gave them, but I was adamant that this was the way I wanted it to be, and this is the way I wanted it to go out, and I don't regret it at all. You know, I think it's probably one of my strongest works, really.
It's surprising because you had the breakthrough with To Bring You My Love. I mean, you had the breakthrough in 95 with that record, yet you felt like those period or that year afterwards or those couple of years afterwards wasn't the best for you personally. Was it because of the success?
Not because of the success. I think it was a hard work, that tour. We did a year-long tour, and it just really ran me down. I wasn't looking after myself very well, you know, physically, mentally, spiritually, at all. I was quite on a self-destruct path. So trying to do such hard work, so many gigs, you know, a year long of gigs, and not looking after myself at all, just drove me into the ground, really. And you know, I became very unwell and very depressed, and it took a long time to pull out of that.
What did turn you around, do you think?
I had a lot of support from friends. I think if I had to say one thing over anything else, I think it would be my friends that really held me together during that time, and I was living with some very good friends that really did support me. Was
it a long battle? Did it take a while?
It took a long time. It was about 3 years of gradually sort of picking myself up again, and finding out what I wanted to do with my life, because it was also a time when I didn't know if I did want to continue doing this thing that was making me really unhappy.
Really? Got that bad?
Yes, but it wasn't. You see, it wasn't the music. It was not. I've never lost my love of creating, and especially singing and creating music. It was more the whole machinery that goes with it that I'd become very lost in. And I was kind of associating the two, the kind of business promotion, touring, slogging side with the actual creative source of making music and of voice and of expression. And the two are becoming very confused for me. And I was associating the difficulties I was finding with that other side with the actual creative side that was leading me to think maybe I just can't handle this anymore.
Yeah, I also get the sense that you at heart are essentially a fairly private person as well, and the music business isn't a good business to be in if you like that.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and I am, and maintain being a very private person. There's certainly a limit to what I will do and won't do, and I know my boundaries a lot better now of what they are.
But how did you feel when, and Nick Cave essentially is a fairly private person at heart as well, how did you feel when The Boatman's Call came out and he did make such a sort of a public statement about the relationship that you two had? I mean, was that irksome for you to have something come out into the open?
It was a very strange time, obviously. It's not an album that I can even listen to very easily now. But, I could kind of surpass that. I'm a huge fan of Nick's writing. I think he's an extraordinary songwriter and just seems to get better and better. And for me to hear that album, I just thought it was some of the best songs that he's ever written. So as a songwriter, I could listen to it and think that's really amazing. That's just fantastic. I was very inspired by it. At the same time, it's a very moving album and one that, does open me up if I listen to, so I don't actually listen to it that often.
Yeah, it must be a shame, isn't it, that you can't sort of enjoy a piece of work like that because it's obviously too close to the bone.
Yeah, I mean, I hope there'll be a time where I can play it, but still now I do find it very difficult.
It is a beautiful record though.
I think it's yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the next record. Mick Harvey's been telling me it's great, so I'm looking forward to that. And I know Nick's life has changed a lot, and I'm sure he's got a lot more things to write about these days.
But it didn't mean a total break in communication between you two?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, for a while we continued to keep contact, but it seemed to have drifted apart these days. We lead very different lives. Nick has a family now, and it's a very different set of circumstances. But I've got a huge amount of respect for him and love, and always will have.
Getting back to the album, do you think that there's a kind of a theme running through these tracks? Because I feel like, in a way, that you're more mature with the songwriting and the viewpoint, not necessarily in the way the songs are constructed, but just the outlook on life, more philosophical maybe or something. Yeah,
I mean, I do find that as I get older, you seem to develop a better sense of perspective, really, a better sense of being one small part of the world instead of it revolving around you, and getting to see a bit more into other people's lives, and that everybody's struggle is the same, really, no matter what you do or what kind of level you're working at. We all deal with the same hardships, really.
I think that's really important for an artist to know that. A lot of them don't, though.
I think a lot of people can get quite lost, and carried away with the whole kind of star thing but I've never chosen to go that path, and I never do want to. I've always kept my feet on the ground and kept quite realistic about life, I think.
Can you hear them? The helicopters. I'm in New York. No need for words now. We sit in silence. You look me in the eye directly. You met me. I think it's Wednesday, the evening, the mess we're in, and the city sunset over me. The city sunset over me.
This Mess We're In is a wonderful track, as you've probably been told many times before, off the album, and I like the attitude in the track. Once again, it comes back to that sense of philosophical or whatever at the end of the song. It's kind of like you're resigned to the fate, but you're not going to let it bring you down too much. It's kind of like a moment in time. Is that very much the way you see the track as well?
Yeah, I mean, that song, as well as a few other songs on the album, I was very interested in just what you explained of wanting to capture moments in time, of making small moments big by putting them into song, you know, fixing them in time, making them something huge when they might have just been a fleeting moment, an afternoon, or a split second of thought that happened. Wanting to capture that essence of feeling in a song. And
that must be pretty hard to get it concentrated or to get that feeling so precise.
Yeah, I mean, that song came out of a lot of writing, pages and reams of kind of free-form writing, and then I honed it down until I had the song. Other songs that came in a similar way of wanting to capture a feeling of a moment was You Said Something is another example. You know, it's just like a certain specific moment in time, but wanting to fix it and make it a beautiful thing.
On a rooftop in Brooklyn at 1 a.m, watching the lights flash in Manhattan. I see 5 bridges, the Empire State Building, and you said something that I've never forgotten. Lean against railings, describing the colors and the smells of our homelands, acting like lovers. How did we get here to this point in living? I held my breath, and you said something.
It's a wonderfully well-rounded album. You must be incredibly happy with the responses that it's had from right around the world. It's got great reviews, and the audiences at the performances here in Australia have obviously been very appreciative that you finally come to Australia. You're surely not going to leave it another 5 albums before you come back here, I hope.
Definitely not. Now I've got here, I absolutely love it, and I think I want to come back very soon. And I have been thinking I'd really like to come back and spend some time here, you know, spend a few months here and actually do some writing as well.
Well, you're yet to hit Melbourne, so maybe that might be the place you might find.
Don't know, I'm pretty sold on Sydney right now.
Well, I'm going to play an impartial judge because obviously I've been living in Sydney all my life, but Melbourne's got a lot of great qualities to it, and I think you'll find a good time there as well.
Yeah, well, Mick Harvey's in Melbourne, so I might have to go there.
Yeah, that was a treat to see him on stage the other night.
Oh,
was
it's the first time we played with him.
I heard you say that, and I can't believe that.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously he played on the record, but it was the first time for me to hear the songs live with him playing the parts, because he played the drums on the songs that he was playing on, and the bass, and he's just got such a lot of charisma, and he's such an astounding player. It's great to have him.
And he can pick up, as you've said before, he can pick up anything, and that's the thing that he's done.
Within seconds, he can play anything. You know, he came in, he hadn't rehearsed those songs since the album, which we made in April. He just came on and just played them just like that, and he really is a genius.
Yeah. Wonderful. Keep on enjoying your stay here in Australia, and it was great to chat to you.
Thanks very much.
If you want to go deeper into music, jump over to Double J. Double J's a digital radio station that plays amazing new music. The classics you grew up with. And brings you the stories of your favourite artists and albums.
Where did you get discovered?
At a sausage sizzle, but there was like 10 people there.
If music makes you, make the switch to Double J. On the Triple J app, the ABC Listen app, your digital radio and TV.